We have an absolute musical treat lined up and ready to go from Live on the Bridge. Let's cross over to John Hart in Studio A, Live on the Bridge.
We've been waiting for this one for a while. It's so exciting to have Darlingside in the studio. Thanks for coming in, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Darlingside, got such an amazing award. Did you guys think that there was a shot at Folk Alliance 2015? You won Artist of the Year. That's pretty heady stuff.
Well, to be fair, no, we did not. But part of that was that the award hadn't existed prior, so there wasn't any expectation for anything. But once we found out it was invented and that we were a nominee, I think there were 3 or 4, so it seemed like a sort of 25 to 33% shot of getting it. So it felt really good to win, certainly. But there haven't been sort of fantasies of winning that for a decade or anything like that. But that's primarily because of the existence issue.
And the voice that you're hearing is Oyen, who you're actually from Kansas City. Welcome home.
Thank you so much. It's good to be back.
And so that had to make it even more special to have at the conference here in Kansas City. And
yeah, it was a wonderful thing, and to have a lot of we've been based in the Northeast, and my parents are still here in Kansas City, so they've been observing progress and lack of progress from afar. So it was nice to have them see some progress here in Kansas City. That was great.
Well, I know that for a while you were thinking about being a doctor, so I'm sure that Mom and Dad were looking at you wondering when you were going to pick that back up.
Yeah, my mother put a little bit of pressure at the very beginning of the band existence, but since then she has done a 180 and is now one of the most aggressive promoters of the band. She might be upset if I were to think about med school at this point.
Well, that's good to hear. We absolutely love the band, and you actually have a couple of shots at seeing them while they're in town. You can catch them tonight at the Record Bar, and then tomorrow night they're your headliners for Spectacle at CCVI. That's the Children's Center for Visually Impaired. It's a fundraiser. It's an amazing cause, an absolutely great event, and tickets are no longer available through the website, ccvi.org, but if you go there, you can pick up the phone number and make the call and get tickets to the Spectacle that's coming up tomorrow night. Congratulations on the album Birds Say. I know that you're working on a new one, but that was a real step up for the band.
Thank you.
Had a long way to travel to the microphone to say thank you. Appreciate you taking the trip.
We're just trying to share the space here.
That's the thing that I think is maybe the one thing that I want to come out of this interview for people is just that you guys share everything. You share songwriting. For a while, you even shared a house, and it's to the point where I think it's almost like beyond brothers. I think you guys almost share a hive mind.
That's what we go for. It's interesting. The working dynamic is all 4 of us are very opinionated and oftentimes feel very differently about things. But part of our goal in our process, whether that's from the songwriting and the lyrics and arrangements, all the way over to how we conduct business as a band and how we travel and do things and how we balance work and life, all those things we try to find common ground. And when we do, we hope that ground is good. At least we agree on it.
You realize that sounds way too healthy for you to be in the music business.
Sorry.
Darlingside in the studio. We'd love to hear some music if we could.
The song is called The God of Loss. I think it has a the. Is it The God of Loss or God of...
It's the.
The God of Loss.
My father was a carpenter, my mother, she died young. I'm the eldest of my brothers, you're the trouble in my blood, trouble in my blood. I swore that I'd stay humble like my father was before. He built the home I live in, of sand and mud and smoke. Sand and mud and smoke. Yes, we will leave here without a trace. Take a new name and an old shape. I'll be no outlaw, no renegade, just your faithful God of laws. So meet me by the river on a boat-shaped piece of earth. We press our bones together and the spider does its work with flakes of garlic and petals from a rose. If it's small enough to carry, you and I can call it home. You and I can call it home. Yes, we will leave here without a trace. Take a new name and an old shape. I'll be no outlaw, no renegade, just your faithful God of laws.
That was just gorgeous. That was amazing. The name of that, The God of Loss, and it is performed live in the Bridge Studios, but the studio version is on their most recent album, Birds Say. That one based on the book, The God of Small Things, or at least inspired by it. So, let's talk about the one mic thing a little bit. When this band first started out, it was 7 members, shrunk to 5, and then the drums went away. And at that point, you've been practicing around one mic. Talk about deciding to use that in actual performance.
Well, as the only member of this quartet who wasn't part of the original 7-person group, I think I can speak to this natural and beautiful progression towards me joining and all those other guys leaving.
Did you drive them away?
I like to think so, yeah. I chased away the riffraff.
Yeah.
No, but when I joined the band, it was a 5-piece, and we had a drummer, and so things were louder and a little more rock oriented. And as our drummer stopped being able to tour with us all of the time, we started thinking about how we could translate some of the magic of our rehearsals, where we would just sing the 4 of us together in a room, up close and personal, and able to hear each other, not through monitors, not through microphones, but just straight mouth to ear. And so putting up a microphone right in the center and picking up the sound that happens after we've all just blended in the room seemed like a way of translating what we really loved about singing together in the room into something that was loud enough that other people could hear it too. So that's how we arrived at the one microphone.
I wanted to just sort of touch on the band name too, because Darlingside, when I heard it, to me it sounded sweet, but I wasn't really following the progression. Homicide, genocide, Darlingside.
Yeah, we're not very sweet people. Yeah, it was it's funny actually that it was in the 7-piece original band that was just brought up was actually the college sort of pre-professional version of the band, and it was a friend of ours in that group that actually, this is a secret we don't talk about very often, but it wasn't any of the 4 of us who came up with it. It was one of those 7, and it came from a class, or was inspired by a class that we took together all sort of at different times, but we all remember that class fondly as having kind of done it together. And the teacher used to talk about killing your darlings, and it's an old literary criticism expression, and we like the idea of that, and we try to do it as best we can. And so Darlingside evolved from that, and we changed the spelling just to try to seem friendly, even though we're not.
So, killing your darlings is like that part of the song that maybe you like, but even though you like it, maybe you love just that one little bit of it, it doesn't really further the song or the book or whatever it is that you're creating.
Yeah, just trying to be aware about when you're falling in love with a piece of your own writing, and recognizing that you are not the audience, and when the audience sometimes can tell that you're too in love with your own work, that doesn't come across well, and it just may be that the audience feels differently than you do, or your bandmate feels differently than you do, and so just keeping that in mind and knowing that not everyone feels the way you do about your own work.
It's such an interesting band progression because it feels like there was no real decision to go professional until the last of you graduated, and then you all move into a house, and it just seems like an unusual story. What was that like?
It was different, I think, for all of us as to how we came to find ourselves as a professional musician. I tried to be a professional a few different other things, and I think maybe my lack of effort was telling that I really didn't want to be those things, and also part of why they didn't work out. So while I was waiting for Harris, is the youngest of us, while he was still in school, Owen was doing some traveling, Don was doing some traveling, I was doing some traveling, just sort of exploring, and we had some odd jobs, and I was experimenting with playing street music in Boston. I did some of that also with Owen in Ireland. And music just kind of kept finding its way into each of our lives. And when Harris graduated, we moved into a house together, and that was the official start of it.
You mentioned Owen traveling, and I know that you actually were sort of getting involved in music in Ireland and Brazil and Turkey, and that's really when it sort of coalesced for you that this is what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to receive a Watson fellowship, which is put together by the kids of Thomas J. Watson, who's the founder of IBM, and it's basically a dream fellowship where you get to plan your year. You plan a full year outside of the U.S. You aren't allowed to come back to the U.S. for a year. You aren't allowed to go anywhere you've been before, and you aren't allowed to be in school or get a job. So it's a pretty weird year. And I had started doing some songwriting with these guys, all except Don, of course, who wasn't part of the band at that point, back in the good old days. And we had...
He didn't take that well, by the way.
Yeah, he's going to get me back later, I'm sure, either here or in the van. But I'd started getting into songwriting, but was studying science formally in school. And the Watson was an excuse for me to go off and study folk music in a few different places, Ireland, Brazil, and Turkey. And over the course of that year, I don't think it was sort of a realization that I was incredibly competent at music, but more that I felt like if there was any time to go off and try something, it was now or then. And so I decided to get in touch with some of these guys and see who was up for joining me on that idea. So. That was my path, and then there were a few minor verbal altercations with my mother in discussing med school versus starting a band, but here we are.
Yeah. The thing that every once in a while when I was getting ready for the interview, I just stumble across something that's actually really small and innocent, but struck me as being really unusual. And when you guys moved into that house, you had regular, family dinners. And just the phrase "family dinners," you don't think of that age with.
We did not have family cleanup.
So did it ever get cleaned up, or did it fall to one person?
Sadly, it fell. A good amount of it fell to Oyen, who cared a great deal about the hygiene in the house. I had not come around on the concept of hygiene at that point in time, but it was a slow training, and I'm still learning, and he is still leading the way.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that the creation of the food was more evenly distributed between band members.
I think one of my favorite parts of the family dinners was that at first there was a game of brinksmanship where you would try to outdo the last person and do a better, more extensive, cooler dinner, and then that sort of reached its natural limit where we checked our bank accounts, and it was getting out of hand. So then the competition switched over to becoming who could do the cheapest meal, and that was a lot less fun. And so the family had to disband after that.
Our guests today in the studio are Darlingside. You can find out more at darlingside.com. Their latest record is Birds Say. And if you heard the last song they performed live, I mean, it's just a really good indication of just how beautiful this music is. And I can't recommend it enough. And I'm sure that you guys are going to have it and other things at the merch table over the next couple of days. So Record Bar tonight for Darlingside, and then tomorrow you'll be able to catch them at Spectacle, the fundraiser for CCVI. Love to hear another song if we could.
This one goes to market. This one makes a meal at home. This one has closets, while the have-nots down the way have none. So I go to the mountains, I go to the river, I pilot machines. People have places, and the places have the people's dreams. Oh, puff, puff and blow the house down. Oh, puff, puff and blow the house down. Oh, puff, puff and blow the house down, and down, and down, and blow the house down. Blow the house down, and down, and down, and blow the house down. There's a song for the robbers on the other side of window panes, a song for the cowboys held up in 100-mile-an-hour trains. And there's one for the lovers and one for the sinners that they sing in the pews. Short of distinctions, I'd say we've all grown tired of singing blues. Oh, puff, puff and blow the house down. Oh, puff, puff and blow the house down. Oh, puff, puff and blow the house down,
That's Darlingside performing live today here on the bridge. You can find out more at darlingside.com. They're at the Record Bar tonight, and then tomorrow they're part of the CCVI Spectacle, which is a fundraiser for the Children's Center for the Visually Impaired. So the recording of the album Birds Say, you worked with Dan Cardinal, who has actually worked with some really great people. Josh Ritter, Low Anthem. What was it like working with him?
Yeah, that was a pleasure. Dan, so he's just sort of a mainstay in the Boston folk plus music scene, and had worked with some friends of ours, the Ballroom Thieves, and we spent a little bit of time in the studio, or just talking about how our recording process beforehand, but I think in general the recording process is is very much band dependent, and for us we are very hands-on in the studio, and Dan is a wonderful combination of knowledgeable and able to sort of play a supporting role when necessary, or allow us to sort of take the reins when we need to. So it sort of became a five-man engineering production team, which was really nice for us to have some outside support and slightly more objective thoughts on stuff that we've been writing, but also the ability to do what we wanted to do, and we had a great time with him in the studio, and so we are currently recording our second album with him right now. I mean, not, of course, we're here right now, but we're in the midst of it, taking a small break while we're in Kansas City.
That's great. So, I'd really like to talk about the songwriting process a little bit, because your Darlingside songwriting process doesn't sound like anybody else's that I've ever really heard of. You all write as a group, and I'm sure that I'm guessing that there's like an initial idea that gets brought into the group. Is that how it works?
I think it really is. It's pretty different every time. We have started to. That certainly was the model going into things. I mean, at the very beginning, it was even maybe one person would write the majority of a song, if not the entire song, and bring it to the group, expecting it to be tweaked, but not changed dramatically. Whereas now, I think we've recognized, or because we perform these songs every night, it really helps when we're all connected to a song, and it's not just Don's song or my song, and we're all performing it. But it's that person's song, and the more we feel connected to a song, the more we can sing it every night and not grow bored of it. And I think that realization has guided us to try now to start as many songs as we can from a group place, or at least to bring everybody in on the song as early as possible, so that we all feel connected to the seed and the root of the song. But there's still a lot of differences in how each song comes together and who spearheads a song, or a pair of people might spearhead a song, and one person might focus more on the lyrics, one person might focus more on an arrangement, and so it's very dependent on what somebody feels inspired to work on a particular day or week or month or year.
I'm just incredibly taken by irony, and so like I really was struck by how beautiful the album is. And then the juxtaposition of what some of the songs are about, like a beautiful song about a sword fight with Harrison Ford.
I'm sorry, was that a question?
I was kind of open for a conversation, but...
Oh, gotcha.
Where did that come from?
Well, we've also gotten better, I think, over the course of our band evolution, of just smashing together different ideas that people have had, and that particular song, there were bits of it. I think a verse from one thing and a chorus that had come from something else, and they kind of ended up getting brought together, partly so that the best of each song could shine through. And in that case, yeah, I think I brought in a draft of just one verse that concluded with a person who looked like Harrison Ford, and then I passed it off, and I think Oyen wrote another verse in which the person who looks like Harrison Ford just became Harrison Ford, and that sort of, we all started drafting bits of this story based on one initial thing, but it's not like anybody had any idea where it was going when it first started, and so that's that's the fun part of it. And that particular song also is a good example, I think, of how we took a template of here's how this verse goes, really simple chord progression, and then we tried every different vocal approach we could think of, and sort of each half verse is its own arrangement, and sometimes we're all singing the words, and sometimes one person sings the words and somebody else is doing an ooh part, and sometimes there's kind of a back and forth echo effect, and we sort of look at some songs as being more of a playground for experimentation, and other ones as something where we sort of logically evolve the song over the course of it, like The God of Loss, the first song we played today.
You know, I wondered if y'all were channeling anything, because part of that Harrison Ford song, some of the imagery is about flight. Turns out he's not that good at it.
It was the week that we were in studio working on that song is when he crashed his plane on the golf course, and fortunately was fine. And but yeah, we got a kick out of that.
You know, there aren't that many bands that, you know, have songs that are inspired by Back to the Future too.
That is a nice segue, because I think that's going to be the next song that we'll play.
Yeah. You know, Rick and Morty is inspired by Back to the Future, the cartoon on the Cartoon Network, and it's wrong in every imaginable way. So Go Back is almost the flip side of Rick and Morty to me.
Just trying to balance things out, doing our best to help the community.
Well, you know, I think that Rick and Morty is probably a really bad influence on me, so I probably really need this song. Maybe we should just go ahead and hear it. I'll try and get better during the next 3 minutes.
We were always on our way, rolling up our sleeves, ever moving forward in the tracks where we lived our simple lives, kept our blinders on, eyes to the horizon. I know, I'm no doctor, but I know you can't live in the past, but the only way to go is to go back and return to who we were before we disappeared into the thick of big ideas. Now we can see the sweeping view, but we're waiting out the storm, stuck under the awning. I know, no doctor, but I know you can't live in the past, but the only way to go is to go back. Into Everglades, greener yesterdays, strip the stones away. Go back to the start, photos in the dark, bloom before they fade. So we hold to who we are, even into the arc, beyond our furthest edges, to a world full of strange and towering skies, and a chance to choose in time, to set out on our own way. I know, no doctor, but I know, no doctor, but I know you can't live in the past, but the only way to go is to go back.
You know, you guys do this really well. I'm a saved man now, I think. Darlingside in the studio. That's the live version of the Bridge Studios of Go Back, one of the tracks that's featured on Birds Say, their most recent album from 2015. There's also an EP that followed in 2016, Whippoorwill, that Birds Say, Outtakes, B-Sides. Can't wait for the new one in 18. We love Kansas City, and having grown up here, it's just such a pleasure to be listening to an album and all of a sudden hear, beautiful harmonies surrounding a lyric that invokes ice skating at Crown Center.
Yeah, that makes me very happy too. And part of with our songwriting process, given that we write as a group, it's often helpful for us to find topics that are mutually agreeable, and childhood is one of them. We all had rather nice childhoods, but the issue is that we grew up in different places. So what will happen often is sort of take imagery from one person's childhood and incorporate, if that might get incorporated into a song in a way that goes in unexpected directions. And it's really fun for me to be able to sing about Kansas City with three of my best friends, none of whom grew up in Kansas City, and sort of make them say it as though they lived here. It's sort of like taking ownership in a really nice way of them and the city. And it's very, just for my ego, it does a lot.
We've wanted to have this band in for a long time, and we finally have had you in, and we can't thank you enough for this. We know that you're really busy, 2 shows over 2 days, and to take the time to come in really does matter to us, and we're really anxious to get the next record. And I'm also anxious at some point, I stay pretty busy, but I really want to take your mom's cooking class at some point.
Yeah, you should. She's great. She's wonderful. Don't talk to her about going to med school and then switch that up. She gets a little angry when that happens. But in terms of cooking, she's wonderful. Thank you so much for having us here. We are. I've been listening to The Bridge since I think 2013 when you all started out, and when I was taking trips back here for holidays, etc. And it's really an honor to be here. And we really appreciate you all taking time out of your schedule to let us come in, because we're just hanging out, and we're really happy to be here. So thank you so much.
It's great when everybody wins, isn't it? You can find out more about the band at darlingside.com. And again, tomorrow night is Spectacle. It's the fundraiser for the Children's Center for the Visually Impaired, and it's going to be great music with Darlingside and all kinds of other really special things happening. So if you'd like to check that out, you can check it out at ccvi.org. But if you want tickets, you'll have to call them, because they're no longer selling tickets online, but it'll be worth your call. Darlingside also playing tonight at the Record Bar. Thanks again so much for coming in. Darlingside on the Bridge.
Thank you so much for having us.